Today, I'm going to talk, I prepared this talk called Redux Hooks, and I'm going to go to this in just a second. First of all, as always, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Fabio Salimbeni. I'm a lead front-end developer at Acuris. And Acuris is a financial news company that has a big technology hub here in London. We have another branch in Iași in Romania, and we have a few other headquarters all around the world, like in New York and Singapore. And of course, as always, when companies send someone to talk a meetup, we're hiring. So, I mean, I have to. Yeah. So, at the moment, we are hiring mainly permanent. So, if you guys want to talk with me after the talk, I'm happy. I have other 3 colleagues of mine there. If you can raise the hands for me, thank you. And that's it, pretty much. That's what we do. It's a pretty cool company. So, yeah, Redux hooks. So, basically, what I'm going to talk about is a story of an application that we made in Acuris that it was an internal tools. So, it's a CMS sort of application for our internal users to allow them to create content and publish them into our websites. The application started a few months ago, and it grew quite fast in a very short time. So it became very big, and therefore it became quite hard to maintain, and it caused some problems, and that's where we start, from our problems. So as said, the application grew up a lot in short times. That means that everything became difficult to maintain, fixing bugs became quite hard, introducing new features as well wasn't the best thing. So we ended up at one point with files that became a huge number of lines. That means hard to work with it. We had, for example, a component for a form, a part of a form, sorry, that was about like 700 lines. So that was totally not useful at all. And then we started having another problem, which is so-called the properties wrapper hell, which is when you are creating a prop at the very top level of the component, and you pass it all the way down to the very tiny little component, about like 5 levels down, and you have 700 components in the middle that just act as proxies. So you don't actually need those properties to be passed all around. And we then decided that wasn't the best approach, and of course we needed to do something about it. So we decided to come up with a solution. And usually in this kind of situation, the solution is to create some sort of store management that allow you to understand what's going on into the application and keep track of all the data that are around, how we are fetching data from the database, et cetera, all of these kind of things. So everyone might think about Redux. That would be a good solution, good candidate for this one. But we said, no, let's not do it. So why go for the easy things, right? So when these set of problems surfaced, it was around the time that React released their version 16.8, which is the one they introduced and released hooks. So we said, OK, React hooks, yeah, let's give it a go. So we tried that new approach, and we said, OK, from where should we start? First of all, I'm going to ask the question, where would you start in this situation, if anyone wants to give an answer? You have like 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1. No one. Cool. Sorry? Use context. Use context. Yeah, that could be approach. Yeah, could be. Test. Another one. Yes. Some people in the team came up with a solution to start from the single components. So we have all of our classes. We start refactoring them, introducing new states, and let the classes become functions, et cetera, and all of that actually was working. It's an approach, it's fine. But by the time that you finish to convert all of the components, then you start adding the store, you start adding your action creators to mock a Redux implementation, sort of, and you have to go back to the component and scrap already what you've done with the use state and introducing the fact that you're reading from the actual store. So it's a rework. And knowing myself, the people that are working with me, and probably some of you guys, which I don't know, but I think so, developers are usually lazy. And we try to do the least job as possible every single time. And luckily, I'm not the only one to think about this, because there is this guy that you might know, which is called Bill Gates, who said that I choose a lazy person to do a hard job because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it. So that's it. That's it. If this was really true, we were all working in Microsoft, whether we like it or not. So that's it. We went for a different approach than starting from the component, going up to the restore, and then going back to the component again. So we started with creating files relating to the context as what's your name, sorry, that you said context?
Potter.
What?
Potter.
Potter, as Potter said. And we created the store as well. So we did add in the store first. So we created a brand new file, not touching the component. Application was still running, no problem at all. And the thing that this file is doing is just creating a reducer function, basic one, and it generates an initial state. We decided to structure our state as per feature because we just wanted to. That's how you structure your own state for the application is totally up to you. We decided as a team to do it like this. And now, bummer I can't scroll, but this file is just exporting the reducer and the state. Next step would be your favorite context. And so we created one. We created just using create context, which how many of you knows or is familiar with context? Apart from Potter, we all know Potter, he knows it. Good, 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 good. So basically, for those who don't know, it's a way that Reacts as to allow you to confine a set of properties just for a set of components. So instead of having all of the properties of all your application passing all of the components, you can wrap certain set of components and giving them only some values that they need, only the values that they need. And so these are the two files. Probably now we just merged it into one. But so we create the context. We create a provider which is going to be wrapped around the whole application. And the provider the hook use reducer to read the user function, use it, read the state, and it gives us back the whole state with a new updated state and the dispatch function that we are going to use for interacting with the state, very much in a Redux way. To make the life of our developers just a little bit easier, we created a custom hook because we wanted to create a custom hook because it was fancy. And we decided just to wrap use context with the use app context. We lack of fantasy names, but it's all right. That's our approach. So far, so good. We've done something. We've set up everything, but none of the component has been touched yet. So we started touching the components. And this is a pretty basic components that we've done. That is just nothing else than a normal accordion, if you think about it. And it just needs to read whether the value that triggers whether it is open or closed is true or false. And we are now reading that from the state rather than having from the app state rather than from the internal state. As you can see, we use the use app context function that we created earlier, and we access a certain section of the state, which is the home part, and then we use it. Very simple, nothing new. If you ever used Redux, it's pretty much the same thing. But now, so what we've done so far, we just read the values from the state. We actually haven't interacted with it. We haven't added anything. So it's the moments where we need to dispatch some actions. And that usually is a normal thing. So you have your own view that dispatch an action, it passes to your, let's say that you have a thunk implementation or a SAG implementation. You have your middleware plays with the action itself, and then it goes to the store, or it goes to your action creators, and then goes to the store in the scenario where you're loading data from a server. Of course, all of that job that usually a thunk, a Saga, or any other side effects manager does is a boilerplate for this sort of approach. So we didn't want to create any boilerplate. Again, we're lazy developers. We don't want to work. So we decided to forget about all of that and to actually break some rules in the middle, in the process. Sorry. And because I personally like quotes, I decided to introduce another quote about breaking rules, which is said by Mr. Arnold Schwarzenegger, which is a very famous developer, as you know, who said that break the rules, not the law, but break the rules. It's impossible to be a maverick or too original if you're too well-behaved and don't want to break the rules. We were actually being too original, because you may have done it already in your companies and so on, but in Acuris, an approach like this never happened. So we were trying something completely new. So we said, OK, let's break some rules. It's fine. And what we did in terms of dispatch, so we created, from the view, again, we created, probably better. So we created these, we used the dispatch function that we can read from the context. We wrapped in a use effect, because we wanted to run it when the component loads. And we dispatched what is just a normal Redux action. So very familiar for everyone, where you have your type, you have your payload, and you have your dispatch function as well, dispatch with it. And this is the first thing that usually is not accepted, but usually actually happens under the hood. If you use, for example, thank, it does it for you in the middleware. So it's actually not having thank, but trying to mock in it, pretty much. And next step is that the actual action gets actually taken from the store, not by a user, not by an action creators. And in the store, we update the state, as we always do, and then we call the action creators function, which is making the reducer function not pure. And that's where we actually broke the rules, because the rule says that the reducer function must be pure, whoever said that. And then we go to the action creators, and nothing really magical happens in there. It's just a normal load data function from the server, nothing major. And this is, following this approach, we managed to convert the whole application, rather than in the 4 weeks that we've been given, in just 2 weeks, which was quite a success thing. And at the end of the whole refactoring, we had a little bit of a retro, or a meeting to understand what we did. And when we presented the newest application, the new version of the application to the rest of the team, which was made mainly of backend developers, they call themselves full-stack developers, and they try to understand React and how it works. And they actually understood it pretty well. They found it easier to move around the application, easier to follow the flow of the data, and so on. So that was quite a success for us. Now, once you do a retro, you usually come up with your pros and your cons and something else. So our pros was the fact that now it's actually easier to write components. We are not using classes anymore. We are using function. This is just due to the use of React hooks. We've done nothing magical in that. We simplified the way how we are testing components, because, of course, when you're testing functions, it's easier than testing classes. You don't have to come out with, to preoccupy yourself about all of the things all of the problems that comes up with that. And we could actually now start using React testing library, as you suggested. That's it. Then at the time when we did it, which was March, was actually using of a brand new technology. Right now, most of you probably already thinks that use is old. Hooks is old, is fine, is all right. But at the time, it was pretty brand new. We felt very cool. We said, like, yeah, we are the cool kid in town. And during the process of actually converting the whole application, we managed to learn a little bit more how to use effect, how to use the use effect hook a little bit better. And we learned how to use the use memo hook. I'm going to explain why we had to do it a little bit after. And the fact that we started using render props provided by the context feature allowed us to solve completely the problems of the props wrapping hell. So now every component that subscribes to the context can read only whatever it needs. It cannot read anything else. That's very good. Of course, and unfortunately, there are some cons as well, which is the fact that the tests initially all got red. But no, they weren't going red because they were failing. I mean, few of them they were. But because when you're testing with hooks and you are doing some actions, you are clicking a button or you are changing an input change, React sends these red warning messages to you. You have to wrap your own action with the act function provided by React test utils. They advertise their own application pretty much. And that's what we discovered. We had to learn that, and this is as a knowledge, but it took some time to figure out how to actually do it properly. And it slows us a little bit. The testing of the store, of course, now required mocking the codes to the action creators, which is a problem. It's not a real problem because you actually have to do it anyway somewhere else in the application, but you never thought to do that into the store. Usually tests of the store are pretty easy. At the end of the refactoring, just as soon as we finished to convert the last component, the application became very, very slow. And the main reason of that is because we were wrapping the whole application with a state that was changing constantly, everything that was happening in the application. And every time that you were updating a component or start writing in an input field, the whole application was rendering. So that wasn't good. So we had to change that. We fixed it by using memo, as I said earlier. So we were wrapping all the components in a use memo hook, so the component were rendering only when the properties they were listening to or subscribing to, they were changing. And the last thing that we left is a point of discussion, because of course the fact that we are using the store functions not in an impure way is something that someone can raise their eyebrow and say, nah, this is just a bunch of BS. So that's a discussion that is ongoing and is still ongoing, because at the moment the application is up and running, it works fine, it's easy to maintain and to expand, and there's no need to actually go and change that unless you really want to stick to the books and really want to have the function to be completely pure. And I've been rushing a little bit, I know that, but that would be my presentation. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please hit me.